Pay close attention to the man slowing his walk in front of the house at 422 Ashford Glen, Dublin, Ohio. His name is Mark Delaney. He is 58 years old and has only moved to this neighborhood less than 3 weeks ago. It is now 7:52 a.m. on March 18, 2024. The air is still cold after the overnight rain. The streets are quiet, most garages are closed tight, and porch lights have been turned off. Mark walks every morning. He is not yet acquainted with the Carter family, but he has passed this house enough times to know that it is usually neat, orderly, and never shows anything out of the ordinary. Today, something is different. The garage door is ajar, not wide enough for a car to pass through. A gray SUV is still parked neatly in the driveway. The kitchen light is on, even though by this hour, most people have already left for work. And the doorbell camera is completely covered with a flat piece of black tape stuck over the lens. Mark stops. He's in no hurry. He takes a few more steps toward the garage, just enough to peer through the gap. Inside, on the concrete floor, a woman's purse lies on its side, its contents spilled out. A few feet away is a single high-heeled shoe. Between the two objects is a trail of blood, about 2 feet long, thin and dark in color. Mark immediately steps back. He does not enter. At 7:54 a.m., he calls 911. Within 6 minutes, the first patrol car arrives. Bodycam footage records that the front door is unlocked. "Dublin police," a voice calls out. No one answers. The house is so silent that their own footsteps on the hardwood floor can be heard. As the officers move into the garage, the radio crackles. "Dispatch, we have signs of a struggle, possible forced entry." There is no body, no phone, no wallet. Only blood and drag marks on the floor. This is no longer a welfare check. This is the starting point of a missing person case, in which every detail in this house will gradually reveal the person who did this had a key, had time, and had a plan. The woman who lived in that house is Dr. Lauren Carter, 43 years old, a biochemical engineer working for a pharmaceutical research company in Columbus. She is the mother of 3 children described by colleagues as disciplined, precise down to the smallest detail, and rarely allowing emotion to influence professional decisions. 6 weeks before the morning of March 18, Lauren walked into the Dublin Police Department to report being stalked. The name she gave was Brandon Hale, her ex-boyfriend from when she was 18 years old. According to Lauren, Brandon had begun sending messages after years of silence. At first, they were just casual check-ins. Then came threats. Emails sent from unfamiliar accounts. A photo of her husband standing outside her office, accompanied by a vague message about an accident that could happen. One morning, discovered a rag stuffed into the exhaust pipe of her SUV. She began documenting everything. Every message was screenshot, every email was saved. She installed additional cameras around the house at the front door, back door, and in the garage. Friends said Lauren no longer slept peacefully. She checked the locks twice each night. Police believed this was a case of an escalating stalker. They requested warrants for digital data, checked IP addresses, and traced virtual phone numbers. But then Brandon Hale had an alibi. GPS data from his phone placed him in Columbus on the morning Lauren disappeared. A gas station camera recorded him paying with a card at 8:11 a.m., more than 2 hours' drive from Dublin. The timing didn't match, the distance didn't match, and that was when the question changed. If Brandon did not take Lauren from that house, then someone else knew exactly how afraid she was, knew the location of the cameras, knew how to disable them, and knew that her fear could be used as a tool. As the digital investigation team began reconstructing the morning of March 18th minute by minute, the story of an outside stalker started showing its first cracks. The Carter family's camera system was not damaged. No wires were cut, no devices were smashed. Instead, the access logs showed that the indoor cameras were disabled from the management app at 7:58 a.m., less than 5 minutes before Mark Delaney saw the garage door ajar. This disablement was not random. It was performed from a valid account with the correct password, and two-factor authentication was not triggered because the device had been previously recognized. This app had only 2 people with access: Lauren Carter and her husband, Michael Carter. No logins from unfamiliar IPs, no signs of hacking, just one legitimate action executed precisely on the morning Lauren vanished. At the same time, analysts discovered another detail. At 9:12 a.m., A message was sent from Lauren's phone to a colleague. Short and to the point, she would be working from home due to a personal matter. At first glance, this message reinforced the hypothesis that she was still free after 8 a.m., but carrier data told a different story. Lauren's phone lost network connection at 8:03 a.m. No movement signals. No pings to any cell towers after that time. The device was no longer active in the system. The 9:12 a.m. message had been scheduled in advance. Someone had composed it. Someone had chosen the timing, and that person knew exactly when to create a time gap. When the warrants for IP data from the anonymous email and messaging accounts that sent the threats were completed, the network addresses were compiled and compared. Most messages originated from public Wi-Fi around the Columbus area, but several critical accesses, especially the one sending the photo of Michael outside the office building, matched the internal network at Michael's workplace and the Ohio Department of Health. This was not an open network. It required employee login. Access history showed that the anonymous accounts were created during times when Michael was confirmed to be present at the office. There was no evidence that anyone else used his credentials at those times. In parallel with tracing the emails, investigators identified a burner phone used to send threatening messages via the Text Now app. This phone was purchased at a pharmacy in Columbus, using a gift card registered in Michael Carter's name. Store cameras captured a man wearing a baseball cap and mask, but the transaction displayed the gift card name matching Michael's financial records. Location data from the burner phone when compared to Michael's personal phone showed the two devices moving almost in parallel for weeks before Lauren disappeared, appearing together at the Carter home at night, appearing together in the office parking lot in the morning. On some days, the two signals were no more than 20 feet apart. Not once. Repeatedly. Consistently. In the analysis room, location charts were overlaid on a large screen. Each colored line represented one device. As layers were turned on and off, the matches became impossible to ignore. The lead investigator noted the camera disable time, the time Lauren's phone went offline, the scheduled message send time, and Michael's location during the same window. The gap between hypothesis and reality was narrowing. If a stalker existed, he would have had legitimate access to the camera system, would have known the app password, would have been on the internal network where Michael worked, would have used a gift card registered to Michael to buy an anonymous phone, and would have moved in sync with Michael's personal phone for weeks. Investigators looked at the evidence summary board. No high-tech break-in, no sophisticated hacker, just data, layer by layer, pointing to the same name. When investigators began digging deeper into Michael Carter's past, what they found was not a clear history of violent crime or serious criminal record, but a repeating behavioral pattern spanning decades, hidden beneath a calm, rational exterior. 20 years earlier, during his freshman year of college, Michael had been the subject of a temporary protective order filed by an ex-girlfriend. The case did not lead to criminal prosecution, but her affidavit documented a notable sequence of behavior: anonymous emails sent to her friends accusing her of cheating, messages from a stranger warning that she was being watched, and calls made using a voice-altering device. The university's internal investigation could not prove Michael sent those messages, but the IP address of several anonymous emails matched the library where he frequently used computers. In her statement, the ex-girlfriend described a pattern: first creating the sense of an external threat, then appearing as the only person who could protect and understand her. When she tried to end the relationship, the anonymous messages increased in both frequency and severity. There was not enough evidence to convict him at the time, but the report remained in civil records, and now it carried a different weight. Behavioral analysts at the Dublin Police Department called this a classic control cycle: create a fake threat, reinforce dependency, and when the risk of losing control appeared, escalate pressure. When investigators spoke with Lauren's close friends, a similar picture emerged. One friend recalled Lauren mentioning divorce in recent months. She no longer trusted Michael. She felt watched, not just by the stalker, but by her husband's own reactions. A colleague remembered Lauren saying, "I can't rule him out," then quickly changing the subject, as if she didn't want to believe what she had just admitted. Family confirmed that Lauren had researched divorce attorneys and asked about custody, but had not yet filed formally. According to them, Michael did not respond with explosive anger. He responded with silence, with staying home more, with offering to help manage the security cameras and protection apps. When these details are placed side by side, the pattern becomes clearer. Stage 1. create an external threat scary enough to make Lauren rely on him. Stage 2. Play the protector, the only one keeping the family safe amid the invisible danger. And when Lauren began to suspect, when she talked about divorce, when she no longer responded in ways that reinforced his power, the cycle moved to stage 3, intensified control. Not through a momentary outburst, but through preparation, through accessing the camera system, through scheduling messages, through using the very fear he had planted in her as perfect cover. Forensic psychologists involved in the case noted that this was not a story of pure jealousy. There was no evidence of an affair, no signs of an uncurled emotional outburst. Instead, it was a long, carefully constructed process in which power and manipulation were central. When Lauren no longer trusted him, when she began to separate herself from the dependency he had built, that power was threatened. And for someone accustomed to controlling the narrative, controlling others' emotions, and controlling how he was perceived, loss of control could be unacceptable. In an internal report, one investigator wrote, "This is not escalation from jealousy. This is escalation from loss of control." That sentence was bolded in the file, because if the cycle repeated, if the pattern from 20 years ago was merely a crude version of what was happening now, then what occurred in the house on Ashford Glen was not an accident, and it was not an immediate reaction. It was the next step in a chain of behavior that had been tested, adjusted, and perfected over time. 2 days after the internal conclusion about the behavioral pattern was entered into the file, a small technical detail changed the entire pace of the investigation. One of the devices logged into the anonymous email account that had sent the threats pinged back to the system when it was briefly powered on for a few seconds. The signal originated from a self-storage facility in western Columbus, about 22 miles from Dublin. The address was identified. The storage unit rental agreement was signed under a fake name, but the entrance camera captured footage of a man whose build and gait matched Michael Carter. At 5:42 a.m. on March 21, the Columbus SWAT team assembled outside the row of gray metal storage units, halogen lights illuminating the closed roll-up doors. Unit number 17 was identified as the target. No windows, no sound from inside. When the door was breached with specialized tools, officers entered in standard formation. No screams, no resistance, only the damp smell and thick, stagnant air of an unventilated space. At the back of the unit, behind a makeshift partition of plywood, they found Lauren Carter. She was alive. She was bound with plastic ties around her wrists and ankles. No signs of fresh bleeding. No natural light. No clock. No items that would allow her to determine day or night. On the floor was a nearly empty bottle of water and several unopened nutrition bars. How long she had been there, at that point, could not yet be precisely determined. Officers cut the restraints and brought her out into the morning light. In a subsequent recording, an investigator described the moment as quiet but urgent. Lauren did not scream. She did not resist. She looked into the light as though needing time to adjust. At the hospital, after stabilization and rehydration, she began to recount. She said that morning had started normally. She dropped the children at school, returned home, and as she stepped into the garage, someone appeared behind her. No screaming, no prolonged struggle. Everything happened quickly. When she regained consciousness, she was in that dark space. She said she did not know how many hours had passed. No windows, no traffic sounds, no changing light to mark time. Michael came at irregular intervals. He brought water, he brought food, and he brought explanations. He said all of this was to protect her from the world. He said the stalker was proof that she needed him. He said if she chose him, if she acknowledged that he was the only one who could keep her safe, then it would all end. Lauren recounted that he did not yell. He did not threaten in an angry tone. He spoke as though solving a logical problem, as though holding her captive was a necessary step in an equation he had calculated long before. She said the most terrifying thing was not the darkness, but the calm in his voice. He repeated that the outside world was dangerous, that Brandon Hale could come back, that cameras and police could not protect her. But he could, and if she cooperated, if she chose right, they could start over. In her statement, Lauren paused when mentioning a phrase he repeated, that he was saving her, that he was sacrificing to keep the family intact. When asked how she felt in that room, she replied that she did not know what day it was. She did not know if her children were at school. She did not know if anyone was looking for her. She only knew that everything depended on the words of the one person who held the key. When the investigator asked what made her realize the stalker might not exist, Lauren said that during one conversation, Michael inadvertently mentioned a detail from a message she had never told him about. That detail was not public, not shared with friends. It existed only in her phone backup. She began piecing the fragments together in her mind. She began to understand that the fear had been engineered. And when the SWAT team brought her out of the storage unit, she said one sentence that was recorded in the official case report. "He said he was saving me, but I was the one locked in a room." Investigators later returned to the unit and collected every piece of evidence. No signs of a third party. No evidence of an independent stalker. Only the rental agreement, fingerprints, and the chain of digital data linking directly to Michael Carter. What began as a welfare check had become a deliberate kidnapping, and the victim, who once feared an invisible threat outside her home, now confirmed that the real danger had stood beside her the entire time, claiming he was protecting her from the very fear he had created. The evening Lauren was rescued, Michael Carter was no longer at the house on Ashford Glen. He was at his sister-in-law's apartment in Columbus, telling family he needed time and could not return to the house where everything had happened. At 9:17 a.m. the next morning, investigators summoned him to the Dublin Police Department to supplement his statement. Michael arrived on time, wearing a gray suit, hair neatly combed, voice calm. He asked about Lauren's condition before sitting down in the interview room, but while he spoke, the digital investigation team completed the final analysis from his work computer and the laptop seized at home. Browser history in the 48 hours before Lauren disappeared included two notable search phrases: "How long can someone survive restrained?" and "How to disable home security without alert." Both were executed on the evening of March 17th, from a device logged into his work account. Not random searches, not single queries. Multiple tabs were opened. Access times were prolonged. On the morning Lauren vanished, the dash cam in Michael's sedan was disabled at 7:49 a.m., shortly after the home cameras were turned off. System data show the recording feature had been manually deactivated. Security camera footage from a neighbor 2 houses away captured Michael leaving the driveway at 8:24 a.m., 30 minutes earlier than his usual work schedule. No sign of Lauren in the vehicle. When asked about that morning, Michael said he left the house at 8 a.m. as usual. The times did not match. The images did not match. Meanwhile, the storage unit rental agreement in Columbus, signed under the alias Daniel Morris, was cross-referenced with footage from the storage facility office camera. The man in the video wore a black jacket, baseball cap, and medical mask. But when the image was enhanced and compared to the pharmacy camera where the gift card was purchased, physical characteristics, height, gait, shoulder movement matched Michael Carter. Fingerprints recovered from the interior door handle of the unit matched samples taken from Michael after he agreed to provide them for exclusionary purposes. When investigators returned to the interview room late that morning, they no longer asked about Brandon Hale. They asked about the storage unit. They asked about the dash cam. They asked about the 2 search phrases and his browser history. Michael maintained his calm tone. He said many employees shared the office network. He said the gift card could have been stolen. He said disabling the dash cam could have been a technical error. But when the investigator placed before him the camera image from 8:24 a.m. on March 18 and a copy of the rental agreement along with extracted footage from the management video, the silence lasted longer than usual. At 1:43 p.m., Michael Carter was placed under arrest on the spot. He was handcuffed and escorted out the back of the building to avoid the media that had begun gathering in front. Initial charges included kidnapping, aggravated assault, criminal impersonation, and stalking. The 37-page arrest affidavit described the chain of conduct from creating anonymous accounts, sending threatening messages, scheduling fake messages, disabling security systems, to renting the storage unit and holding the victim in a windowless space. No evidence of third-party involvement. No sign of an independent stalker. As he was led through the courthouse hallway for initial processing, Michael did not bow his head. He looked straight ahead. No reaction as the charges were read aloud. In an internal report, one investigator noted that the most striking thing was not the digital evidence, but the consistency in his demeanor. Calm, controlled, unacknowledging, as though everything remained within his scope of management. The trial began in January 2025 at Franklin County Court, Ohio. The courtroom was packed with reporters, Lauren's colleagues, and Dublin residents who had followed the case since the morning Mark Delaney called 911. Michael Carter entered in the same gray suit, the same upright posture as on the day of his arrest. He sat still, never looking toward the witness stand. The prosecutor opened with a brief, unemotional sentence. This was not protection. It was possession. She did not speak of explosive anger. She did not speak of an accident. She spoke of a plan built over weeks, deliberate, layered with disguise, and with the single goal of control. Evidence was presented chronologically. Google search history the night before the abduction. Camera disabled data at 7:58 a.m. The scheduled message sent at 9,012 while the victim's phone had been offline since 8,003. Disabled dashcam footage. Neighbor's camera capturing 8,024 a.m. Storage unit rental signed under an alias but accompanied by extracted management camera images. Location charts showing the burner phone and Michael's personal phone moving almost in parallel for weeks. No single piece of evidence was sufficient to convict on its own, but the entire chain of data, when placed side by side, formed an unbroken line. Lauren Carter testified on the fourth day of the trial. She took the stand with a steady voice, though there were still pauses when recounting the windowless, lightless, timeless space. She described the times Michael came to the storage unit, the words he repeated about saving her from a dangerous world. She repeated the sentence recorded in the investigation file. He said he was saving me, but I was the one locked in a room. The courtroom fell silent when she said it. Michael did not turn around. He did not collapse. He showed no clear emotion. The defense attorney argued that the digital evidence could be misinterpreted, that many people could access the internal network, that the gift card could have been used by anyone. But each argument met a countering fact. Personal login logs, access times matching office badge swipes, device locations pinpointed to the second. The digital trail had no emotion. It did not hesitate. It did not forget. The jury took less than 8 hours to reach a verdict. Michael Carter was found guilty on all counts: kidnapping, aggravated assault, criminal impersonation, and stalking. The judge read the sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. No reaction from the defendant, no apology, no final explanation. When the trial ended, Lauren stood outside the courthouse, surrounded by family. She had done everything a person could do to protect herself. She documented the messages. She reported to police. She installed cameras. She researched attorneys, but security systems could not stop someone who had the password. Police could not arrest someone who had not yet revealed himself. And the most dangerous person did not need to break down the door to enter the home. In the final case summary report, one investigator wrote that this was a classic example of coercive control escalating into physical captivity. But for Lauren, it was not a legal term. It was the reality she had survived. The story began with a slightly open garage door and a curious neighbor. It ended with a lengthy sentencing document and a much shorter reminder. Sometimes the person you fear most isn't outside the house. It's the one who never leaves. If you find this story thought-provoking, please hit subscribe so you don't miss the next cases analyzed in this level of detail. Thank you for following to the end, and see you in the next episode.